Hello and welcome to Earth Files, a quiet place where questions move slowly, where wonder takes its time. Tonight we will not rush. We will not try to solve everything. Instead, we will step gently into one of the oldest mysteries above our heads. What if the stars shaped our minds? Not just our calendars, our myths, or our navigation, but the very structure of how we think, how we dream, how we imagine. Could the countless pinpricks of light that have guided sailors, storytellers, and scientists for millennia have also guided the inner constellations of human thought itself? It is a question both simple and vast. To look at the stars is to look back in time. Some of the light above us tonight began its journey before the first humans walked the earth. And yet, for as long as humans have existed, we have looked upward. Our lives have been measured by that nightly scattering of fire. Our bodies have been tuned by the rising and setting of those patterns. Our stories have been written in their shapes. Before we continue deeper, let me pause for a moment. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Somehow, across continents and oceans, across evening or morning, we meet here in this quiet reflection together. If you enjoy slow explorations like this, where science meets mystery in calm conversation, I invite you to subscribe and join us again. It helps this small light reach other curious souls. Now, let us continue. To begin, we have to think about rhythm. The stars are not only distant suns, they are markers of repetition, the return of Orion in winter, the steady climb of Sirius before dawn, the moon waxing and waning. These cycles formed the earliest human sense of time. Long before clocks or even writing, people watched the heavens and learned to live within their rhythms. Crops were planted, not by counting days, but by noticing which constellation greeted the horizon at sunset. Journeys were made by waiting for the right stars to rise. Rituals were held when the sky returned to its remembered shape. In this way, the stars did not simply mark time, they created time. And when time is created, thought itself is structured. To think in seasons, to plan for future returns, to remember what last year's sky brought, is to think in abstraction. It is to build memory into pattern. The heavens trained us to look beyond the moment, to weave past and future into the present. But rhythm goes even deeper than culture. Within our bodies, circadian clocks turn with the rotation of Earth, aligning our hormones, our sleep, our moods, to light and dark. We know now that these rhythms are tied to genes and brain chemistry. But before the age of artificial light, those cycles were not set by electricity or schedules. They were tuned by the stars, by nightfall, by the predictability of celestial return. It is humbling to consider that every thought we have, every surge of wakefulness or a heaviness of sleep, may in some way echo the same cosmic order that places constellations in the night. Our inner world of rhythm may be a reflection of the outer sky. And then there are the stories. Across cultures, separated by oceans and languages, humans have mapped the stars into figures. Hunters, rivers, serpents, birds. The constellations are memory systems. Each shape is a story encoded in the sky. Orion the Hunter is not only a pattern of stars, but a reminder of myth. The Pleiades cluster is not only a group of suns, but a tale of sisters across countless traditions. What does this tell us? That the sky served as the first great canvas of human imagination, a place to project thought, to anchor story in something both immense and constant. In a world where landscapes shifted and lives were brief, the stars were reliable. They returned. They offered permanence to memory. And so the mind learned to link thought with pattern, to turn imagination into shapes fixed in the heavens. The stars shaped language, too. Many of our oldest words for time, for fate, for guidance, trace back to terms for celestial bodies. Astrology, though no longer a science, once wove the very vocabulary of destiny into the language of stars. Even navigation gave us words like orientation, from Orion, and consider, which literally means to observe the stars. Without them, our speech, our metaphors, our ways of explaining ourselves would be profoundly different. If the stars shaped language, memory, rhythm, and imagination, then perhaps they shaped consciousness itself, not in the sense of some mystical force raining down from above, but as a patient tutor, a backdrop that slowly trained the mind to look outward and upward, to connect, to abstract, to wonder. Think for a moment of the cave painters in France or Spain, tens of thousands of years ago. On their walls, alongside animals and human figures, some scholars believe there are dots and arrangements that mirror constellations. If true, then even in that deep time, when survival was fragile, people were already looking to the stars to place themselves in a larger order. Already they were making the leap from earthbound struggle to cosmic imagination. It is striking that modern astronomy, with its telescopes and equations, is in some way the continuation of that same impulse. We still map the heavens. We still seek meaning in their arrangement. We have changed tools, but not the gaze. The stars have always drawn thought outward, as if training the human mind to stretch beyond itself. And yet, even as they shape us, they remain profoundly silent. No star explains itself. No constellation tells you what it means. That silence is part of the shaping. It teaches imagination by leaving gaps, by offering patterns, but no words. Constellations invite us to fill them. In this sense, the stars are the oldest teachers of metaphor. They gave us the practice of linking the known with the unknown, the earth with the sky. When you stand under a night sky, you are not only seeing light that began its journey long ago, you are standing inside the very classroom that shaped human thought, a place where rhythm, memory, story, and imagination were first practiced. And though cities and screens have dimmed that sky, for many of us, its quiet lessons still linger in our language, our bodies, our ways of thinking. So what if the stars shaped our minds? Perhaps they gave us more than guidance on seas or calendars of planting. Perhaps they gave us the very framework of thought, and in doing so, they remind us that the mind is not separate from the universe, but born in conversation with it. When we left off, we reflected on how the stars may have shaped rhythm, language, and imagination. To go deeper, let us step into the way these distant lights trained entire societies to order their lives, and perhaps to order their minds. Consider the great civilizations that rose along rivers: the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River. Each depended not only on the flood of water, but on the flood of time. To survive, people needed to know when waters would rise, when rains would fall, when to sow and when to reap. The answer was not in the soil, but in the sky. Priests and early astronomers tracked the heavens, recording which constellations accompanied the seasons. Over centuries, they built calendars not of paper, but of starlight. In Egypt, the heliacal rising of Sirius signaled the annual flooding of the Nile. Without that flood, there would be famine. Without Sirius, there would be no preparation. The star became more than a point of light. It was a messenger of survival, a clock for life itself. Over time, it became entwined with myth, worship, and identity. In this way, the human mind was trained to see connection, to link celestial patterns with earthly events, to think symbolically, to weave together distant causes with local effects. In Mesopotamia, priests traced the heavens with meticulous care. The patterns of Jupiter, Venus, and Mars were recorded 4 generations. Out of this grew both astronomy and astrology. At first, the records were practical. When certain stars appeared, rains followed. When a planet lingered in a constellation, political events might occur. Over time, the patterns were given meanings. The sky became a book to be read, a text written in light. Even if today, we no longer treat astrology as science, the mental practice it nurtured was profound. It taught the mind to imagine that distant lights could carry meaning, to practice interpretation, to seek order in seeming chaos. That practice of ordering, of discerning structure, is at the heart of human thought. Far to the west, on the plains and mountains of the Americas, cultures watched the Pleiades. In the Andes, their position in the sky helped predict rainfall and harvests. In North America, the same cluster was seen as 7 sisters or birds, woven into ritual and story. The sky was not passive decoration. It was a library, a living archive that offered guidance if one learned to read it. And in the Pacific, where islands were scattered across vast oceans, the stars became roads. Polynesian navigators memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars. With no compasses, they crossed distances that rival modern voyages, guided only by memory and the movement of the night. Each star became a marker on an invisible map. To carry such knowledge was to carry the world. The discipline required not only practical skill, but an inner reshaping of the mind, a way of thinking where sky, sea, and memory fused into one seamless whole. What does this tell us? That the stars did not only give human stories, but shaped cognition through necessity. To survive, people had to learn to think in patterns larger than themselves, to link the distant with the near, to read signs and imagine futures. This habit of thought, born from the heavens, may have been a seed for abstract reasoning itself. But the shaping of the mind by stars was not only collective, it was also deeply personal. Imagine a child lying on their back in the grass thousands of years ago, looking up. The night is dark, unbroken by artificial light. The sky is alive with more stars than most of us today have ever seen. Patterns emerge: a hunter, a serpent, a river. That child begins to connect dots, begins to name, begins to imagine. The stars have awakened not only cultural calendars, but the spark of creativity within a single person. To dream is to map the infinite, and the stars provide the first canvas. Modern psychology tells us that the ability to find patterns, to connect dots, is central to intelligence. It is how we learn, how we predict, how we understand. But too much pattern seeking can lead to illusion, to false connections. The stars, in their silence, offer both. They encourage the mind to connect, but they do not correct. They leave room for imagination to run free. Perhaps this is why so many cultures saw different stories in the same sky. The stars offered the framework, but the human mind painted the meaning. This may explain why the stars also shape spirituality. In nearly every culture, the heavens were not only practical tools, but sacred. The Maya built temples aligned with celestial events. Stonehenge marked solstices. The pyramids echoed Orion's belt. To raise stone toward the sky was to make permanent the link between earth and heaven. But what is spirituality, if not the recognition of connection beyond oneself? To believe that the human story is tied to a greater story written above. The stars shaped not only calendars and navigation, but the human longing for meaning. As we think about this, we must pause and notice something. The stars shaped human thought not by force, but by invitation. They were always there, waiting to be noticed. The shaping happened through attention, through patience, through generations of watching. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson, that the mind is not formed in isolation, but in dialogue with the world, with rivers, with soil, with animals, and with the stars. Today, most of us live beneath skies washed pale by city lights. We may see only a few dozen stars on a clear night, and yet, the imprint remains. Our words still carry echoes of the heavens. Our clocks, though mechanical, still trace cycles first marked by constellations. Even our sense of wonder, when we look up, still awakens as it did for those who lay on the grass long before us. What if the stars shaped our minds? Then we must ask another question. As the stars fade from view in modern life, what is shaping us now? Screens, algorithms, artificial rhythms of work and rest. These too are patterns. These too invite attention. If the stars once trained us to look outward, to connect ourselves to something vast and timeless, what are we being trained to see today? It may be too soon to answer, but one thing is certain: the stars remain, even if hidden from sight. They continue their rhythm. They rise and fall. They return. The same patterns that taught our ancestors to plant, to navigate, to dream, still shine above us. They remind us that the human mind was not built in isolation. It was built in dialogue with the cosmos. And perhaps, to remember this, is to recover something we have forgotten, that thought itself is not only human, It is a conversation with the universe. If the stars shaped calendars, stories, and navigation, they also shape something even more elusive, our sense of time itself. Time is invisible. It has no color, no form, no sound. And yet, for humans, it became a force to be measured, divided, and remembered. Without the heavens, we may never have found a way to anchor time in anything at all. Long before clocks ticked seconds, the sky marked cycles. The day ended when the sun disappeared and the stars emerged. The night shifted as constellations moved slowly across the horizon. The year renewed when familiar stars returned after long absence. The stars provided repetition, and with repetition came rhythm. With rhythm came the human capacity to measure. To measure is to create memory. To remember is to create story. And story, once born, can shape entire civilizations. Take, for instance, the lunar calendar. To look up at the moon is to watch change in real time. A sliver becomes a circle. The circle fades back into darkness, and the cycle repeats. Stars fix their patterns, but the moon carried visible growth and decline. Many cultures combined lunar and stellar cycles to refine their sense of months and years. The pairing of permanence and change in the heavens mirrored the pairing of permanence and change in human life. Birth, maturity, decline, death, renewal. These became not only natural events, but temporal metaphors. Even our words reveal the impact. Month echoes moon, season echoes sowing and reaping, tied to constellations. To speak of time is to speak in language carved by the sky. The very grammar of human thought, then, has stellar roots. Yet there is something more subtle. The stars did not only mark cycles, they instilled the idea that the future could be predicted by the past. If a constellation appeared before the harvest in one year, and the harvest came, then its reappearance could be trusted. The heavens became not only a memory, but a forecast. Out of this arose the very idea of planning. To plan is to imagine tomorrow. To imagine tomorrow is to think beyond instinct, beyond immediate need. It is to stretch the mind across time. This stretching may be one of the greatest transformations the stars gave us. Other animals live by rhythm. Migration follows the seasons. Reproduction follows cycles. But humans, guided by stars, imagined rhythm as pattern, and pattern as plan. Our capacity for foresight, for civilization itself, may be rooted in nights of careful watching. Let us imagine such a night. The air is cool, a fire glows faintly, an elder gestures to the sky, tracing a shape across the stars. The younger ones watch, memorize, repeat. Year after year, the elder teaches when rains will come, when rivers will flood, when cold will arrive. Memory passes not in books, but in pointing fingers and spoken names. The stars are the blackboard, the elder the teacher, the mind the pupil. Generation after generation, the same lesson is written again. This is not only survival, it is education. The heavens became the first classroom, but as time passed, the stars did more than instruct. They provoked awe. To watch the slow wheel of the night sky, to realize that the same stars return in a cycle larger than any single life, was to glimpse permanence in a fragile world. Crops failed, rivers dried, empires rose and fell, but the stars came back, always. They provided a kind of stability against which human life seemed brief. Out of that contrast grew humility, but also ambition, to build something that might last as long as the stars. Temples, pyramids, written words carved into stone. If time was shaped by the stars, so was eternity. Humans began to think not only of days and years, but of forever, of cycles that never end. Eternity was imagined by looking up at the lights that never seemed to die. Even as individuals faded, the constellations returned, untouched. Perhaps this is why so many myths place souls among the stars. To die was not to vanish, but to join the eternal sky. Yet there is another layer. The stars did not only create a sense of eternity, they also inspired the idea of destiny. If the heavens move in patterns that never break, then perhaps human lives, too, are written in pattern. Perhaps the story of an individual or a people can be traced in the alignment of stars at birth, or in the rising of a constellation at war. This belief may not hold scientific truth, but it shaped human minds profoundly. To imagine destiny is to imagine that one's life is not random, that it has meaning beyond the present. That meaning can be discovered by looking upward. And so the stars train the mind not only to measure, but to search, to seek connections, to imagine unseen causes, to believe in hidden order. This habit has never left us. Today, we search for patterns in data, in mathematics, in physics. We send telescopes into space, hoping to read a larger truth written in galaxies. The ancient stargazer and the modern scientist are not so different. Both are shaped by the same impulse, to look upward and find order in what seems infinite. We might ask then, if the stars shaped our sense of time, what happens when we lose them? In cities, the sky is often faint, erased by artificial light. The cycles that once trained the mind are hidden. Clocks replace constellations, algorithms replace rhythms. Do we lose something essential when we no longer live beneath the great wheel of the heavens? Perhaps, but the memory endures in our language, in our symbols, in our very psychology. The stars shaped the foundation. Even if the house has changed, the foundation remains. There is something gentle and mysterious in this. The stars never spoke, they never forced. They simply shone, and in shining, invited. The human mind accepted that invitation, and in doing so, it became something new. A mind that could remember, measure, plan, hope, and dream. What if the stars shaped our minds? Then perhaps, without them, we would not have time as we know it. We would not have history, or calendars, or plans. We would not have destiny or eternity. We would not even have story. For story is the weaving of memory into pattern, and pattern was first learned from the heavens. And so, when we look up, even today, we are not only seeing light from distant suns, we are seeing the architecture of our own thought, reflected back at us. When we think about memory, we often picture it as something inside the brain. But long before memory was written into books, or stored on devices, it was reflected outward, into the night sky. The stars became a living archive, a vast and silent library, where knowledge was encoded not in words, but in patterns. To remember the sky was to remember the world. Consider the earliest seafarers. They launched wooden vessels into open water with no maps, but the heavens. The North Star stood as a fixed point, a quiet guide that remained when all else shifted. Constellations rose and fell in reliable arcs. The memory of their movements became a language that could not be spoken, but only traced with a finger in the air. To sail by stars was to carry in one's mind both a compass and a calendar, passed down from generation to generation in oral tradition. Each voyage renewed the memory. Each safe return confirmed it. The stars did more than direct ships. They shaped imagination. When we dream, images gather from fragments of life and memory. But what happens when memory itself is filled with constellations, with slow and luminous patterns traced across centuries? Then dreams, too, become cosmic. Myths often describe heroes and gods placed among the stars. Perhaps such stories are not arbitrary. Perhaps they are the inevitable flowering of minds trained by the heavens to weave narrative from light. In this way, the stars did not only shape outer knowledge, but inner vision. They became part of how we dreamt. Children falling asleep beneath open skies may have carried constellations into their sleep. Dreams of flight, of journeys, of immortality may have borrowed their scaffolding from the endless shapes above. The psyche itself was starlit. It is easy to think of the stars as distant, but in truth, their influence was intimate. They determined when food was planted, when journeys were made, when rituals were held. Communities moved and gathered in rhythm with constellations. The night sky was not only decoration, it was schedule, calendar, memory, myth, dream, and guide. And then something remarkable happened. The stars shaped not only what humans did, but how they conceived of themselves. When people saw constellations, they did not only see animals or gods, they saw reflections. The Great Bear, the Hunter, the twins. Human forms were mirrored in cosmic patterns. The universe was not empty. It was anthropomorphic. It carried our shapes back to us, made larger than life. This may have reinforced a deep sense that the human story mattered, that it was written into the very structure of the cosmos. To live in such a world was to feel surrounded by mirrors of meaning. Each star, each constellation, became both symbol and signal. This shaped consciousness in a profound way. Consciousness is not only awareness of the present, it is the weaving together of present, past, and possible futures. By gazing into the heavens, early humans practiced that weaving every night. They connected cycles across years. They connected symbols across generations. They connected themselves to a cosmos that seemed alive with story. It is worth pausing here, for in modern times, we often treat stars as objects, balls of gas burning across distances. Their scientific reality is majestic, but it can feel cold. Yet to our ancestors, they were more than physics. They were teachers, storytellers, companions. If consciousness was shaped by them, then perhaps we are, in a quiet way, their children. Minds grown out of light, trained to pattern, to imagine, to remember. There is a subtle but powerful connection here. The stars taught us to look outward, but in doing so, they also taught us to look inward, to imagine meaning, to place order where none is obvious, to weave stories where there is only light. That habit is the essence of consciousness, a stream of awareness that cannot help but search for pattern. If we inherited that from the stars, then every thought we have may carry, faintly, their imprint. Think of how often we use stellar language for inner experience. We speak of light bulb moments, of bright ideas, of being in the dark or enlightened. We speak of shooting stars as wishes, of star-crossed lovers as fate. Even today, in a world of telescopes and satellites, the symbolic power of the stars shapes language. Words reveal inheritance. Each phrase is a small fossil of a much older way of seeing. And so, what if the stars did not only shape ancient minds, but continue to shape us now, in subtle ways? Even if few of us read the constellations for planting or sailing, we still orient by their metaphors. They remain woven into imagination, into art, into poetry. A culture may forget its origins, but traces remain, like faint starlight that arrives long after the star itself has gone dark. This continuity suggests something more. Consciousness may not be fixed. It may be shaped and reshaped by the environment. The stars were once the great shapers. Today, artificial lights and screens take their place. But the principle remains. The mind absorbs its cosmos. It reflects what it sees, which raises a quiet question. How different might we become if we lose the stars entirely? Would we dream differently? Would our imagination narrow? Would our sense of time, eternity, destiny shift if we no longer lived beneath the constellations? In some ways, this is already happening. Modern children may grow up knowing the names of cartoon characters more readily than the names of stars. The sky is hidden by buildings, by haze, by light. Our ancestors would find this unthinkable. For them, the stars were as essential as the seasons, as water, as air. To lose them would have been to lose orientation in both space and time. And yet, when we step away from the artificial lights, when we find a place dark enough, the stars still reveal themselves. And in that moment, something ancient stirs. A sense of quiet recognition, as though the mind remembers an old teacher. This recognition hints at how deeply they shaped us. Their lessons are not gone. They are simply waiting, written in light, ready to be remembered again. Perhaps this is why stargazing still produces such profound feelings. We call it awe. We call it wonder. But perhaps it is also memory. A return to the first classroom, where time, story, and imagination were first formed. What if the stars shaped our minds? Then even now, in the most modern of times, they are not entirely absent. They remain as metaphors, as memory, as awe. They remain in language, in art, in dream. And when we look up, they remain as presence, silent, patient, eternal. A reminder of what formed us, a reminder of what we might still become. When people first looked up and began to wonder, they were not only seeing stars, they were seeing order. Night after night, the sky returned with its constellations intact. The heavens became a canvas of continuity, where cycles played out with precision. To live close to that sky was to live with the conviction that the universe had structure. It was this conviction that gave rise to philosophy, to mathematics, to science itself. In ancient Mesopotamia, priests and scribes observed the heavens not simply as stories, but as data. They recorded the rising and setting of planets, the repetition of eclipses, the intervals of conjunctions. These records became the first calendars, the first mathematical tables, the first attempts at prediction. Without the stars, there would have been no reason to imagine such patterns, no foundation for a method of inquiry that could be called science. The Greeks took this inheritance further. To them, the heavens were not only a place of cycles, they were a place of perfection. Stars, unchanging to the naked eye, contrasted with the impermanence of earthly life. This led thinkers like Plato and Aristotle to frame the sky as a realm of eternal truths. From this, the idea of universal laws was born. The mind, shaped by constellations, reached toward order and abstraction. What humans saw in the stars, they sought to uncover in themselves. This is no small influence. To gaze at the heavens is to confront infinity. To then imagine that such infinity could be understood, that it could be measured, calculated, and predicted, is an extraordinary leap. Yet it is precisely the leap that gave us astronomy, geometry, and eventually physics. The stars shaped not only myths and dreams, but rational thought. The very structure of logic may trace its lineage to patterns seen above. Even time itself, as a concept, was sharpened by the heavens. Before mechanical clocks, people measured hours by the movement of shadows and by the arc of constellations. Days, months, years all were drawn from celestial cycles. This created the rhythm of human life. Festivals, harvests, journeys, and rituals all followed time as written in the sky. Consciousness was disciplined by starlight, ordered by celestial clocks. In this sense, the mind was not only inspired by the stars, it was trained by them. Philosophers recognized this. Pythagoras taught that the cosmos was structured by harmony, much like music. He spoke of the music of the spheres, where planets and stars moved in ratios like strings on an instrument. Though symbolic, the idea revealed something profound. To imagine the heavens as harmonious was to imagine the universe as intelligible. The stars were not chaos, they were order, and in seeking that order, minds grew sharper, more attuned to pattern, more capable of abstraction. But the stars also brought humility. To stand beneath them was to recognize scale. Human life was brief. Civilizations rose and fell, yet the constellations endured. They looked down upon wars, migrations, the building and collapse of empires, and remained unchanged. This bred a consciousness, both ambitious and modest. Ambitious in its attempt to reach upward, to understand the heavens. Modest in its recognition that such understanding might always be partial, a glimpse rather than possession. As the centuries passed, science emerged more fully. The stars remained the laboratory, the quiet teacher. Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Newton all turned their gaze upward. From that gaze came heliocentrism, telescopes, the laws of planetary motion, the theory of gravity. These discoveries reshaped humanity's place in the cosmos. No longer was Earth the center. No longer was the sky perfect. The stars were suns. The heavens were vast, and the human mind, shaped by them, expanded in proportion to meet the revelation. It is worth remembering, though, that all of this began with simple observation. Night after night, people noticed. They noticed Orion rising in winter, Scorpio in summer. They noticed the wandering stars, the planets that moved differently from the rest. They noticed eclipses, comets, novae. This act of noticing is the seed of science, and the stars were its soil. In this sense, the stars did not simply decorate the night. They structured human thought. They provided the first laboratory, the first blackboard, the first set of phenomena vast enough to awaken the question, why? Without them, philosophy might have turned inward too quickly, confined to the narrow limits of earthly life. With them, the horizon of thought expanded to infinity. Even today, our sciences still echo this origin. Cosmology is the study of the universe as a whole. Physics seeks laws that govern both atom and star. Mathematics is applied not only to the practical, but to the abstract, following patterns that once began in celestial cycles. The very act of searching for order, of believing that order exists, may be a gift from the stars themselves. There is a quiet beauty in this, for it suggests that human reason, often seen as separate from imagination, may in fact share the same roots. Myth and science, dream and data, all emerged from the same sky. One night, a child looked up and saw a story. Another saw a pattern. Both were right. Both responses shaped us. And so, what if the stars shaped our minds? Then they did so in multiple ways. They trained memory, guided journeys, seeded myths, and nurtured reason. They gave us awe and humility, but also precision and logic. They were both muse and mentor. To forget this lineage is to forget part of ourselves. As we continue this journey, we might ask, if the stars shaped imagination, and then shaped reason, what else did they shape? Did they leave traces in our very emotions, in our sense of belonging, in the way we search for meaning? If so, then perhaps the night sky is not only a mirror of our past, but also a guide to our inner life, still present, still shaping. Even now, when we speak of identity, we often think of language, homeland, or family. Yet for most of human history, identity was also written in the sky. Entire communities looked upward and found themselves mirrored in constellations. In those patterns, they saw not only stories but shared ancestry, codes of survival, and bonds that stretched across generations. Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the constellations were not simply pictures drawn by connecting dots of light. They were integrated into the land, into rivers and mountains, into cycles of food and ceremony. The emu in the sky, formed not by stars themselves, but by the dark dust lanes of the Milky Way, is one example. Its position told when emus were nesting, when eggs could be gathered. This was practical knowledge, but it was also cultural identity. To know the stars was to know one's place, one's duties, and one's story. In Polynesia, the stars were a map. Navigators memorized thousands of star paths, learning how each rose and set relative to the horizon. Voyages across the Pacific were made possible because communities shared this celestial knowledge. The stars became a compass, but also a teacher of resilience and courage. To set out across vast waters in canoes required trust in the sky. That trust was inherited and passed on, binding people not only to each other, but to the cosmos itself. In the northern latitudes, the Great Bear, or Ursa Major, served a similar role. For many peoples, the position of this constellation guided orientation through forests and tundras. The North Star, fixed above the horizon, gave a sense of stability in a changing world. Travelers carried it in memory as both direction and reassurance. To lose sight of it was to risk being lost. To see it was to feel at home, no matter how far from familiar ground. What emerges from these traditions is the recognition that stars shaped collective memory. They were mnemonic devices, anchoring oral traditions. A people could embed entire histories in the sky, ensuring they would be remembered long after words alone might fade. In this way, constellations became both library and school. By teaching children the stars, elders ensured continuity. Identity was carried in starlight, preserved across centuries. There is a subtle psychological effect here as well. To grow up within such traditions was to feel the sky as intimate. The stars were not distant, in different points of light. They were alive with meaning. They watched over communities. They confirmed belonging. In this sense, the human mind was not only shaped by intellectual abstraction of celestial patterns, but also by an emotional bond with the night sky. The stars became family. Over time, this intimacy produced larger frameworks of belonging. Empires and civilizations looked to the heavens to legitimize themselves. In Egypt, Pharaohs were linked to the stars, their souls ascending to Orion after death. In China, dynasties claimed the mandate of heaven, with celestial phenomena seen as affirmations or warnings of imperial rule. In the Andes, the Inca aligned temples and roads with solstices and stellar risings, embedding cosmic order into civic life. To be part of a people was to share in the patterns of the sky. Even in more recent centuries, the stars guided identity. Nations adopted constellations as symbols. Flags bore stars as emblems of unity or destiny. The American flag carries stars to represent states, each one part of a greater constellation of union. The European Union uses a circle of stars to represent harmony and shared purpose. The symbolism is ancient, even if the context is modern. Humanity continues to reach upward for meaning, and in doing so, continues to let the stars define who we are. If the stars shaped identity, they also shaped emotion. Or is one such response to stand beneath the Milky Way on a clear night, far from city lights, is to feel a kind of reverence that is difficult to capture in words. Psychologists today call this emotion awe, and they note its effects: humility, a sense of connection, and a shift in perception of the self. People feel smaller, but also part of something greater. This emotion, rooted in starlight, has likely shaped human behavior for millennia. It may have encouraged cooperation, ritual, and the search for transcendence. Fear was another response. The stars could warn of omens, eclipses, or comets. Ancient records often describe panic when the heavens appeared to change. Yet even fear was formative. It forced communities together to seek explanation, to create rituals that restored balance. In this way, anxiety about the heavens became a motor of creativity. It spurred stories, ceremonies, and eventually scientific investigation. Fear and awe together pushed humanity to seek meaning, and in seeking, minds grew more intricate. There is a pattern in all of this. The stars did not simply shape thought in abstract, they shaped culture in lived experience. They bound people together through shared stories and navigational skills, through rituals and calendars, through emotion and wonder. They turned survival into identity, and identity into continuity. The human mind was not isolated in this process. It was communal. Consciousness itself may have been sculpted by the shared gaze upward. Modern science continues to uncover evidence of this deep connection. Studies in cognitive anthropology suggest that collective rituals under the stars fostered cooperation, trust, and resilience in early societies. Neuroscience tells us that awe alters brain function, quieting regions tied to self-focus, while enhancing feelings of connectedness. Astronomy and psychology intersect in these findings, confirming what ancient peoples may have known intuitively. To look at the stars changes us. Perhaps this is why, even today, people seek out night skies in moments of crisis or reflection. Campers, poets, astronomers, and travelers all describe the same sensation: perspective. Life feels different under the stars. Troubles shrink, questions grow. A kind of quiet clarity emerges. It is as if the mind, shaped by countless generations beneath starlight, remembers something older than language, older than civilization itself. This brings us back to the question: what if the stars shaped our minds? If so, then they did not merely provide information, they provided identity. They gave us a sense of who we are in relation to one another and to the cosmos. They offered emotion, humility, belonging, and awe. Without them, humanity might still have survived, but it would not have been the same humanity. Our sense of self, our sense of community, even our sense of purpose may be starlit at their core. And as the night stretches forward, we might ask, if the stars shaped identity in the past, how do they shape us now? In an age when fewer people see them clearly, cities wash them out, screens distract from them, yet the impulse remains. We still feel the need to know our place, to connect, to belong. The stars are still there, waiting. Perhaps part of our future depends on remembering this inheritance. The stars did more than orient hunters or unify rituals. They offered a canvas upon which humans painted their ideas of destiny. When people gazed upward, they did not see only patterns of light. They saw pathways for futures yet unwritten. This sense of destiny, shaped by the heavens, became a deep current flowing through civilizations. The Babylonian sky watchers were among the first to formalize this idea. They charted the positions of planets and stars, keeping records across generations. For them, the movement of the heavens revealed cycles that echoed on Earth. The fate of a king, the success of a harvest, or the rise of empires might be linked to a conjunction of planets. In this way, destiny became measurable in the sky. The mind of humanity absorbed this lesson. The future could be read, if only one understood the signs above. In Greece, philosophers refined this connection. Plato described the cosmos as ordered and harmonious, suggesting that human souls were tethered to the same rhythms as the stars. The Stoics taught that fate itself was woven into the fabric of the universe, that to align one's life with the cosmos was to achieve wisdom. These were not merely abstract ideas. They were reflections of countless nights spent under starlight, letting the mind wander from observation to meaning, from cycles of nature to cycles of human life. Across the Indian subcontinent, the stars shaped an even more intricate vision of destiny. Jyotisha, or Vedic astrology, mapped the heavens into precise divisions, interpreting planetary movements as indicators of personal and cosmic order. Birth charts were calculated as maps of potential, guides to a life's unfolding. Whether one accepts this as literal or symbolic, the important truth is this: the stars offered a way for humans to imagine futures, to seek guidance, and to place their lives within a larger cosmic narrative. In the Maya world, astronomy became inseparable from prophecy. Their calendars tracked celestial cycles with extraordinary accuracy, weaving together time, destiny, and ritual. For the Maya, history itself unfolded according to cosmic rhythms. The stars were not distant. They were active forces, shaping the timing of ceremonies, the reigns of kings, and the unfolding of human affairs. In this sense, destiny was not random. It was written in the heavens. From these traditions emerges a subtle but profound influence on the human mind, the belief that life is part of a larger story. When people looked upward and imagined futures tied to stars, they cultivated foresight. They learned to see time not only as a present moment, but as a flow, with patterns repeating and cycles returning. The stars became the teachers of patience, of long vision, of anticipation. They trained the human imagination to think in centuries rather than days, to prepare not only for tomorrow, but for generations. This shaping of destiny through the stars also influenced leadership. Kings, emperors, and pharaohs were often considered aligned with celestial order. Their rule was legitimized by the heavens. Coronations, wars, and treaties were timed with eclipses or alignments. The idea that power itself had to harmonize with the cosmos gave rulers both authority and responsibility. The stars became a mirror in which humanity projected its hopes, fears, and ambitions. The psychological weight of this cannot be overstated. To believe one's destiny was connected to the stars was to feel less isolated, less fragile. Individual lives could feel fleeting, but under the stars, they were woven into eternity. This sense of continuity comforted communities. It gave purpose to struggles, resilience to hardships, and context to achievements. The night sky whispered that human life, though small, was never without meaning. Yet, destiny in the stars was not only about rulers and empires. It was deeply personal. A shepherd in the hills, a traveler on a road, or a child by the fire might all wonder what their life would become. Looking up, they could imagine futures as vast as the sky. This act of imagining destiny is itself a shaping force on the mind. It nurtures curiosity, hope, and the willingness to dream. It turns the night sky into a silent companion in every personal journey. Science today frames destiny differently. It does not place futures in the alignment of stars, but it does acknowledge cycles and rhythms. Biology speaks of circadian rhythms tied to light and dark, guiding sleep and activity. Astronomy reveals cosmic cycles that govern the Earth's seasons, ice ages, and climate shifts. Physics explores the possibility that time itself is structured in ways we barely understand. In this way, even modern science admits that the universe shapes the flow of human existence, though it explains it through forces rather than omens. What if this shaping of destiny by the stars left an imprint deeper than ritual or science? What if it carved patterns into the very architecture of human thought? When we imagine goals, when we speak of dreams, when we chart courses for our futures, are we not echoing an ancient habit of looking upward and projecting possibility onto the heavens? The mind, shaped over millennia by starlight, may still carry this cosmic inheritance. And so, the stars remain both mirror and map. They reflected destiny in the past, they guide our rhythms in the present, and they continue to inspire visions of the future. To walk under them is to remember that human lives have always unfolded beneath their silent gaze. Perhaps destiny itself is not written in the stars, but the ability to imagine destiny surely was born there. The story of the stars shaping our minds does not end with timekeeping or the rhythms of agriculture. The influence reached into the very way we thought about morality, destiny, and our place in the universe. To ancient peoples, the heavens were not only a calendar, they were a code, a kind of moral architecture that suggested harmony, balance, and order. In Egypt, the stars were woven into the principle of matter, truth, justice, and cosmic balance. The rising of Sirius marked the flooding of the Nile, a gift of renewal that fed life along the river banks. This annual event became more than agriculture. It was a symbol of order emerging from the cosmos. To live in alignment with Mat was to mirror the harmony of the heavens in human society. Kings, scribes, and priests all understood that ruling well meant keeping the balance that the stars displayed above. The same was true in Mesopotamia. Astronomers observed the planets with such detail that they linked their movements to events on Earth. Eclipses, conjunctions, and sudden appearances of comets were not random. They were messages. If the skies grew dark or a planet reversed its path, it meant rulers should take notice. The stars seemed to hold counsel, offering warnings or blessings, as if morality itself was reflected in the heavens. In Greece, philosophy elevated this idea even further. Plato described the soul as a kind of star, luminous and eternal, fallen into the body, yet always longing to return to its source. Aristotle framed virtue as balance, modeled on the steady motions of the heavens. Later, the Stoics taught that to live well was to live according to nature, which meant accepting one's place in the cosmic order. The stars became more than lights in the sky. They became teachers of virtue. In India, the night sky inspired both astronomy and ethics. The cycles of stars and planets were seen as reflections of Dharma, the moral law that sustains the universe. Just as the heavens moved in reliable order, so too should human beings strive for harmony in their actions. To act in selfishness or chaos was to break with the cosmic rhythm. To act with integrity was to align with the stars. For the Maya, morality was inseparable from cosmology. Kings and priests used celestial alignments to mark rituals, not simply to track seasons, but to maintain balance between the human world and the divine. The stars were not passive observers. They demanded respect, attention, and responsibility. Each ritual tied human actions to the motions of the sky, reinforcing the sense that morality was cosmic in scale. This shaping of morality through the stars left a lasting impression. Even in modern times, echoes of it remain. We speak of people being guided by their stars. We call remarkable figures stars themselves. We use the language of light and darkness, of rising and falling, to describe human character. Though we no longer read morality directly in the heavens, the metaphor remains, born from an age when the night sky was our teacher. Yet alongside morality came the sense of destiny. The stars seemed to chart more than seasons or ethics. They hinted at personal fates. Astrology, in its many forms, emerged as a way of reading those fates. To the Babylonians, the stars recorded the will of the gods. To the Romans, they marked omens for empire. In China, the mandate of heaven was confirmed or withdrawn through celestial signs. In each case, destiny was not imagined in isolation. It was written into the sky, vast and enduring. Modern science does not affirm astrology as the ancients practiced it, yet the impulse behind it remains revealing. Humans looked upward and felt that their lives were not disconnected from the stars, but bound to them. The constellations seemed to reflect human stories. Orion was a hunter, Cassiopeia a queen, Perseus a hero. By mapping these myths onto the sky, people imagined themselves woven into something larger. Their struggles and hopes were mirrored above, made timeless. What this shows is that the stars did more than mark time or inspire wonder. They gave humans a way to believe that their lives had meaning. The vastness of the heavens could easily have produced despair, a sense of smallness. Instead, people found connection. The stars became symbols of permanence, a backdrop for human dramas that might otherwise have felt fleeting. In that way, the stars shaped not only memory and morality, but the very entrance of hope. As astronomy advanced, the heavens became less mysterious in one sense, but more mysterious in another. The discovery that stars were suns like ours, scattered across unfathomable distances, expanded the human imagination. Suddenly, destiny was not only about Earth, it could stretch across galaxies. Morality was not only human, but perhaps universal. If other worlds existed, they too might live under their own skies, telling their own stories, learning their own lessons from their stars. In the 20th century, with telescopes revealing billions of galaxies and spacecraft reaching outward, humanity faced the immensity of the cosmos with new eyes. Yet even then, the stars continued to shape minds. They became symbols of exploration, resilience, and collective effort. The space race was not only technological, it was mythic, carrying the old dream of reaching for the heavens, now translated into rockets and machines. The same awe that once inspired temples and calendars inspired astronauts and satellites, and so we arrive at an understanding that is both simple and profound. The stars shaped the human mind, not in a single way but in many. They gave us rhythm, they gave us memory, they gave us morality, destiny, and hope. They reminded us of cycles and permanence, of mortality and eternity. They offered a mirror in which we saw both our fragility and our greatness. To forget the stars is to forget part of ourselves, but to remember them, to truly look up and notice, is to reconnect with the ancient teachers that have guided us since the beginning. The stars still wait above us. They still trace their patterns, silent and steady. And if we listen carefully, we may still find in them not answers, but the kind of questions that keep our minds alive. If we trace back across the ages, through stone carvings, ancient observatories, whispered myths, and the slow turning of calendars, one truth becomes clear. The stars have always been more than distant fires. They have been companions, guides, and storytellers. They marked the passage of time and shaped the first rhythms of human memory. They offered direction for the traveler and meaning for the dreamer. They gave us cycles to plant by and metaphors to live by. To think of the human mind without the stars is almost impossible. Imagine early humanity without a night sky to wonder at, without constellations to trace, without patterns to memorize, without questions rising each evening as the horizon faded into shadow. Would curiosity have bloomed in the same way? Would memory have stretched so far? Would stories have carried so much depth? The stars stretched us outward. They reminded us that life is not only about what lies close at hand, but also about the vastness beyond. They trained the mind to imagine the unseen. They pressed us to think in terms of cycles longer than a single lifetime. They whispered of permanence in the face of mortality. Even now, when we measure time with atomic clocks and navigate with satellites, we still echo the habits formed under the sky. The human heart, too, carries their imprint. To look up at the stars is to feel both small and infinite. It is to hold humility and wonder at once. This dual feeling shaped our sense of morality, our stories of creation, our belief in destiny. Whether through Egyptian maps, the Stoic sense of cosmic order, or the Mayan rituals of alignment, people found in the stars a reminder that life is not random. It is part of something ordered, something vast. Today, even as city lights dim the night sky, people still seek the stars. We gather in observatories, we travel to dark deserts and high mountains to see the Milky Way unfurl. We send telescopes into space to capture light that has traveled billions of years to reach us. And when we see those images, our minds do what they have always done. They imagine, they wonder, and they expand. Perhaps the greatest gift of the stars is not certainty, but wonder. Not answers, but the questions that keep us reaching. They remind us of where we came from, for our bodies themselves are made of their remnants, and they remind us of where we might yet go. Across the night sky lies not only memory, but possibility. So when you next look up, let it be slowly. Let the stars remind you that you are connected to something far larger than yourself, yet deeply a part of it. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, noticing itself through your eyes. Thank you for joining me tonight in this quiet exploration of how the stars shaped our minds. If you found calm or wonder in these reflections, I invite you to subscribe so you can journey with us again. I would also love to know where in the world you are listening from and what time of night or day you press play. Your comments become part of this shared constellation of thought and memory. Until next time, may the stars guide you gently. Good night.